Ever since the Chinese national legislature announced the draft decision of the HKSAR national security legislation days ago, there have been accusations coming from some foreign politicians of so-called double standards and so-called hypocrisy. What's the true aim and nature of this legislation? Earlier, I talked to NPC Deputy Maggie Chen, who is also a lawyer in Hong Kong. Let's find out. Maggie Chen, welcome to CGTN. The legislation related to national security issues of Hong Kong that is now under discussion at the Standing Committee of the NPC. How do you think it is likely to have an impact on the freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and also the movement of the Hong Kong citizens?
It will not have any adverse impact on the freedom of speech, the right to peaceful assembly, etc. Because the enactment is to improve and establish the legal system and the enforcement mechanism in Hong Kong so as to protect national security in Hong Kong. I must stress that it is in strict in accordance with our constitution, our national security law of motherland, the basic law, the Bill of Rights in Hong Kong, and even the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights.
What do you make as a lawyer of the realities in Hong Kong over the past year or so? The division and the movements on the streets, and also even violence in public spaces. What do you make of it?
The turmoil and the unrest in Hong Kong since the Occupied Central in 2014 and even the extradition amendment bill last year, there are a lot of underlying cause. The main underlying cause is the distortion of the extradition law amendment bill by the adverse and hostile force, both domestic and external. Secondly, and most important of all, there is a rising force of separatists. This is what concerns our motherland. So the decision is to have the enactment to protect the national security in Hong Kong from the from the state level. There is always a well balance between the individual freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, I mean peaceful assembly and peaceful gathering. According to the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, the freedom and the rights that I've just mentioned is not an absolute one. It must be subject to certain restrictions. The restrictions consist of public order, national security, and the protection of legitimate rights of individuals. So it's in accordance with the law because Hong Kong adopts and practice common law. I have also to explain in details. There is a case law which was decided in 1999 in the Final Court of Appeal in Hong Kong. The case is called Gong Siu case. It was expressly stated that although the freedom of speech, freedom of expression is fundamental and very important in a society, but it's always subject to restriction, and public order is within the regime of the restriction. It is expressly stated in the case that the correct implementation of the one country, two system and the national security is within the regime of protection. So it is always legitimate for our central government and the Hong Kong to impose restrictions so as to protect national security.
Maggie, I know you've been very active in the earlier months, particularly related to the local council election. However, at this moment, it seems that that election result was not very much satisfying, at least to the so-called pro-establishment camp. So what do you make of the election itself, and how do you think the pro-establishment camp has learned its lesson?
Well, I had been a district councillor in Hong Kong for about 16 years. And of course, I was not a candidate for the past district council election, but I was deeply involved in it and an observer from the outset and of course up to the end where result came. What I can say is the result implicates both the pro-government and the anti-government sides are not satisfied with the government of Hong Kong. What our pro-government camp, pro-establishment camp learned about that, it's the rule of law is so important to Hong Kong. Without the rule of law, we cannot have a fair election because in the past district council election, we were threatened by force, we were threatened by others, petrol bombs, and all kinds of intimidation. Not only the candidates were threatened by adverse and the hostile forces, the voters were frightened to vote for us. So in that case, if somebody advanced their political means and targets without regard to any law, then there would be no fair justice and fair election. This is what we learned.
So Maggie, what about now with this piece of legislation about the national security issues related to Hong Kong? Will situations get better, or Hong Kong will temporarily more be divided and also likely to be more violent than at least a few weeks ago?
There is increasing national security risk. So first of all, if we wish to have a fair electoral election, we have to safeguard our nationality. No matter what's the result of the electoral election, either for or against the pro-government camp, the most important thing is to ensure national security, but not to ensure the seat for the pro-government camp in the electoral. This is the most important point. National security law is a must for every sovereignty. Foreign powers should not and must not adopt double standards. On the one hand, they are very cautious about their national security. They placed every single word on national security and takes national security's priority over everything. But why, when our motherland, China, wished to protect itself, use the law as a shield to protect itself? We are not allowed to do so. Why? National security is not a privilege for the foreign powers. We, China, has to protect itself by using law. We are here to rule of law.
And that's all we have for this edition of Weigh In Two Sessions. In fact, for this year's Weigh In Two Sessions, our special coverage of the annual political season in China. On behalf of the team here at the Great Hall and the team back in our Beijing studio, thank you for watching.